Well, coasters, it's Bruce here, and we're in Hokitika. Fine, sunny, brilliant day, and we're going to do a bit of a series on Porkies Takeaways. Now, I'm with Andy Lyes and Sonya Mathews, who have taken over ownership of Porkies from Kelvin Taylor. Kelvin's our famous fireman. Andy, what do you know about the history of Porkies?
Oh, it's long and outstanding. I think it's well, obviously Kelvin and Linda were the previous owners.
Yeah.
They've had it 12 years.
Were they that long?
Yep. Yeah. It may stand to be corrected, but I think they were only going to be here for a short term and ended up 12.
Oh, I love it. Now, Drew Howard tells me that his dad had the butcher shop here.
That's right.
Now, that'd have to be going back a few years, wouldn't it?
A few haircuts.
It's a few haircuts. And then it sold, and then it turned into a fresh fish and fish and chips. And I can't think of the name. Was it?
Is that the Petrovich?
Petrovich, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this place has been... what happened after the Petroviches? I think
it was Porky Johnson then, wasn't
Yep.
it?
Yeah,
Barry Johnson.
famous Porky Johnson.
Porky Johnson. Porky's sausages revolutionised the trade. They were huge, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
And so, and now of course then Kelvin and probably the odd one in between, and now you guys.
Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting move. Andy, what about you? Where were you born?
I'm local, Bruce, about fourth generation. Apart from my work, which sort of took me away a little bit, I'm born and bred.
So who were your mum and dad?
Kevin and Emma.
Okay.
So Emma was a school teacher, mum's still alive, and dad passed away about 2 years ago.
What was your dad's name?
Kevin.
Oh, look, that's a famous name. So,
He was.
and the Lyes family, quite a military background to the family in many ways.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. My brother David, he's still sort of involved in that side of things. He's overseas at the moment, sort of in the bomb disposal area.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he keeps sending messages on the Coasters Club on a regular basis,
Yeah, he keeps in touch.
making sure we're doing what we're meant to do.
Yep.
What about you, Sonya? Who are your mum and dad?
Okay, well, my mum and dad are Rex and Rose Mathews, imports to the coast actually, but long time imports. So, yeah, I think they came down about 49 years ago to Haast, of all places, honeymooning,
Right.
and made their way north to Hokitika a short time later. So my brother and I, there's just the two of us, we're born and bred, and largely been around with some trips away, gaps away, and
Hey, well,
home now.
the ones that don't go away missed a lot, haven't they?
Yeah, well, I think it makes you appreciate what you have got when you travel a bit and you see what's out there, and it makes home that bit more special.
So, Andy, when you were a kid, what'd you do for fun?
Oh, jeez.
You know,
What can I say and what can't I?
well,
I mean,
like you
listen,
said,
in those days it was, we used to go down the beach and swim, would you believe? Something that we don't encourage nowadays, but this time of year we used to go down the beach with the Maitlands, who are our first cousins, and Dad used to sit on the beach while we all built rafts and stuff, and we went out and we just played in the surf.
so did you ever have any trouble with the rip? The famous rip?
Yeah, we did, but we could all swim, Bruce. And although the funny thing was, I was the youngest out of all those cousins and brothers.
Yep.
I found out later on that my father couldn't swim to save himself.
Oh, you're joking.
No.
You'd be right. Dad would go, oh, go and get help.
There was a lot of she'll be right back then. But, we survived and we got through that. Canary Water Race was another place we used to go swim.
In the race itself?
The race itself, and we just had a rope tied across the very last port of call, basically, and if you didn't catch that, you're in the crack.
Well, look, someone told me there's trout in there. Is that true? Have you ever seen any trout in there?
I haven't seen trout in there. I've seen lamprey eels,
Okay.
stuck
Wow.
on the sides, because we used to do a bit of diving in there as well.
Sonya, what about you? When you were a kid, what did your family do for fun?
Well, what did we do? So we spent a lot of time out at Lake Canary actually. So we were lucky enough to end up purchasing a jet boat.
Yeah.
And the trade-off on that was that we had to pick and clean and dry moss in order to generate some funds to help buy this jet boat. So yeah, once we had that, we were pretty much out the lake as much as we could. Rain, hail, sun, summer, winter.
It's beautiful out there, isn't it?
Fabulous. Yeah.
Andy, did you ever meet your grandparents?
Yes, I did. So I remember them. I was young.
Yeah.
But yes, I absolutely.
4 of them, or 2 of them, or 1 of them?
Yeah, no.
All 4.
All of them. Yeah.
I think this is the first interview that I've done
Yep.
where someone's met all 4 of their grandparents. How's that?
Yeah. No, I did.
Do you remember anything that the old fella said?
Oh, look, they were very poor. You know, they didn't have a lot of money. I just remember the small houses that they lived in, and a little chippy. And yeah, it was hard times. I was very, very young.
Well, I think it was quite common though, the small houses and the chippy and and you know those grandparents that we all had that come through the Great Depression had quite a different way of looking at things
Absolutely.
than the way we were brought up.
Yes, no, absolutely.
And what did your granddad do for a living?
So Algie. So my mum's maiden name was Renish.
Right.
So Algie Renish was his name, and he was he built a lot of the bridges down Haast. So
Oh, wow.
He was down there a lot.
Was there a Renish Electrical here at one stage?
Yeah, that'd be George.
It was George.
Yep.
Actually, quite
That'd be
right.
George. In fact, you might have. Did you take over? His
No,
business?
no,
Was that
mine
part
was-
of Ellery's, or?
No, Miller Electric.
Yes, that's right.
But Renish was, I think, the Sparky who took it over. I can't think of his name. But Sonya, what about your grandparents? Did you meet any of them?
I did. Not all of them. Only 3 were surviving when I was born. So 2 of them were based in the far north, so north of Kaitaia and Awanui.
Right.
And then my dad's father, well, he was actually based in Haast and then later in Hokitika. So yeah, 3 of them.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool, isn't it? It's sort of, you just don't realise how many people don't have the pleasure of
Yeah.
meeting, listening to their grandparents.
Yeah.
This is
Oh, Coast, this is the second part of a chat with Sonya and Andy Lyes. The first part, really interesting, got some fantastic comments, and I guess Andy, we'll pick up where we left off. Whereabouts were you born?
Hokitika, Bruce. Yeah. Born here.
Were you born up the hill, or do you think?
Yeah, it would have been Westland, I suppose. Westland Hospital.
Isn't that fantastic? Now listen, your first home, when your mum brought you home from the home, where was your first home?
It was in Hall Street, which is the house that was a homestead, really. We all grew up there. Well, I certainly did anyway, being the last one.
Were you the last of the litter?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you poor thing.
Spoiled, they say.
Did you hear that, Dave? And your folks have lived there for a long time.
They have. They built the house, and when they built that house, I remember seeing the photos, and it was about the only. In fact, it was the only house there. It was next to the Scout there.
Yep.
And it was just bush. The rest was just all bush right up to Tudor Street. And, yeah.
So, Sonya, what about you? Where were you born?
Oh, in Hokitika, Bruce. So my parents are migrants to the coast
Right.
from Northland, and they came down here honeymooning actually a million years ago.
Yes.
And so both my brother and I were born and bred in Hokitika.
And when Mum brought you home from the home, where did you go to?
Went to Ross actually. So that's where Mum and Dad were living at the time when I was born. And then, a couple of years later, they made the move north to Hokitika.
To the big capital.
That's the one.
Into the big smoke.
Yeah, been here ever since.
Andy, do you ever have a nickname?
I adopted my father's name for some people, which is Shorty. So some groups, some people will know me as Shorty, others won't. They'll just know me as Andy. So it's Andrew, but
It's a good man that can adopt his dad's nickname. I tell you what. What about you, Sonya? Did you have a nickname?
No.
Not really into that.
No.
Andy, what primary school did you go to?
Hokitika Primary.
So that's in the same location as it is now?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the school just doesn't seem to have changed at all.
It's a bit like Westport South School for me. I quite often drive past and it's just, nothing changes.
Percy Hurren doesn't go there anymore though.
Oh, he doesn't?
He used to arrive there and we used to have our pasties. And
Percy's
pies.
pasties, I tell you what.
Famous.
The recipe's still the same?
Apparently.
Dicey uses the same recipe, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
What do you remember about going to school, Andy? And, wasn't that many years ago?
Yeah, look, I remember the seasons more than anything. I mean, we either walked or biked to school. Very rarely were taking cars, or anyone was. But I remember the drinking fountains, and in the winter time they used to have a couple inches of thick ice in the drinking fountain.
And the puddles.
Yeah, puddles. There was, and I mean those big permanent puddles, they had tadpoles in them. That was when there used to be frogs galore.
Whatever happened to the tadpoles?
I don't know, they're gone now.
I think you're probably right. Sonya, what about you? Where did you go to school?
So Hokitika Primary, which was really close when we were living in Jolly Street. We just ducked through the back, right up at Heenan Place. They used to be able to cut through into the field.
Did you know Andy then? Did you ever see him?
No.
He'd have been a scrawny wee fella, wouldn't he?
No.
Don't you reckon?
No, he's about 10 years older than me.
Right. So
He'd have been at high school.
he'd have been one of the big boys.
Yeah.
But less than that.
And then Westland High School. So.
And do you still connect with any of the, can you recall any of the kids you went to primary school with?
Absolutely. In fact, sometimes we'll come across old school photos back from primary school and you're like, there's a few faces that are unfamiliar, over time you've lost the memory. But yeah, it was certainly with high school, definitely in touch with quite a few. So,
Andy, what about you with primary school mates? Any of them still around?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of them left quite early in their life. But it's just amazing how many have come back. It's just.
And is that something that we're seeing a lot more of? I feel that we are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think they just want to come home, don't they?
Come back to their roots. Yeah.
I think it's a stage of life thing almost. Yeah. You
it's
can't just leave, go away, explore, and then come back.
Very powerful draw card, isn't it? The old home. Sonya, did you have a subject at school that you really liked?
Look, I think it was probably I was interested in social sciences, social studies. I think it was probably called. So those sorts of things. Definitely wasn't maths or science. So that's it, and I think that interest carried through into tertiary study eventually. Ended up doing.
So what sort of? How do you mean it carried through? Did you go and do a bit more work in that area?
Yeah. So I stayed at Westland High School until 7th form, as it was back then.
Yes.
And then carried on to Christchurch and did a travel agents training course, probably similar to your daughter, Bruce. And then some years later, when I was off flying in the Middle East, I came back to studying by distance through Massey University, doing criminology. Well, no, actually psychology first, and then a criminology honours through.
I thought it would be interesting, wouldn't it?
It was very interesting. Love human behaviour.
Now, so when you're talking about travelling overseas, so you worked for one of the airlines?
So I did. I initially worked for Air New Zealand in Christchurch, and then I went on to fly for Emirates, based in Dubai, and then found my way to Thailand to live there for about 5 years.
Goodness me.
Yeah, which was great. Loved
Andy,
it.
the things you just don't know about people.
No, I know.
And then ended up back in New Zealand. And
What about you, Andy?
Um,
A favourite subject? A subject that you really enjoyed?
Look, I really enjoyed, I think in primary school they called it playtime and lunchtime.
Right.
And I was really good at that. Because we played bull rush, played scrag. And
So you'd have been almost at
terrorise
the
girls.
you'd have been at the top of the class in that area, wouldn't you?
Yeah, look, I just like sport more than anything. But in terms of subjects, maths would have to be what I enjoyed the most.
That's interesting. So, Sonya, you're into anything, I guess. Kind of feels like if it was people, you were pretty into it.
yeah, interested in people.
And Andy was playtime. And what about Andy? What about a teacher that did a great job?
Probably one that jumps to my mind is Bernie Conradson.
I played tennis with Bernie.
Yeah, look, he was a great man, and he was just. I look back, and funny enough, he took maths, which is probably why I did okay at maths.
Yeah.
And he was just no nonsense, but he was also just no bias or just nothing. He just taught a subject really well, related well to people, and was just a bloody good guy, a really good guy.
Yeah, he's of course he passed away, but
Yes.
I enjoyed playing tennis with him. He's a very what's the word? Level.
Yes.
He was just steady.
Solid.
Yeah, very
Yep.
solid.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
and also, if I recall rightly, very difficult to beat at the time. I don't know what that was. What about you, Sonya? You have a teacher that was, that stuck with you, that you remember?
Look, I think probably Jane Team.
Oh, yeah.
Similar vein to Bernie Conradson, actually, fair. You knew where you stood, and she took no prisoners. So I always remember her typing class, ironically.
Yeah,
Good
she's
times.
really good value.
Yeah.
And with Andy, all the teachers good?
Yeah, look, I had a great run, and look, we've got to be fair. I think there was some people didn't get a good run, or sometimes, especially in primary school, just some things may happen, whether it be pupils or teachers that had a real impact on people. Just sometimes what you say.
Yeah.
But look, I had all my teachers were great.
I wish I could say the same.
Well, there you go. You see?
What about you, Sonya?
Oh, look, it's that long ago, Bruce. I can't hardly remember. So nothing sticks out, but can't complain.
Now, question. Look, you both went to Westland High, and one of the things that I've observed in looking around for people, researching and looking around for people to interview, I've observed that there's a huge number of people who have done outstanding in whatever career, like Sarah Olsen and neurosurgery, and there are people who are chief executives around the country, and there are people, there's some amazing people. Has Westland High had an impact on you, Andy? Do you think? Why do you think that?
Why?
Yeah.
Why do we look? I think it's a coasters thing. I think coasters are grounded, and one thing that we can do that others may not, and that's we communicate and relate to people in a genuine way. And I think that just happens naturally, just because a small town, good support, good values, good upbringing.
I think that's a pretty good explanation. What about you, Sonya? You see anything special about? I mean, why is it that they do so well?
Look, I think it's probably a bit of resilience. I think that just, perhaps more so in the past when communication wasn't what it was and so instantaneous as it is today, I think there was a certain amount of resilience that was beaten into you or bred into you to, make the most of situations and just get on and do and go forward and explore and ask and look, and I think that's something that's come through living on the coast and through the institutions here.
And it'd be fair to say that type of attitude has been supported and applauded, isn't it, in the community?
Yeah, definitely.
It really has.
Absolutely.
Andy, when you were growing up, was there anything you really wanted to be? Did you want to be a police dog?
A police dog.
Or a postman, or a? You become a senior policeman. What did you ever want to be that in the beginning?
I never thought about it because it wasn't an option to me. I was too short.
You're joking?
There's a minimum height back then, so that wasn't an option. So the next thing that I liked was trucks and cars and motorbikes.
Right.
So I went down the automotive line.
And so you did an apprenticeship?
Did an apprenticeship, yeah.
Where'd you do that?
Walls Motors, and Rossi Wallhouse owned the
Oh yeah,
garage.
I remember Rossi.
So I was 14 years old, obviously still at school, and he offered me work, which was full-time in the holidays and after school. And he offered me an apprenticeship, so as soon as I got the chance,
You're into
I was gone and doing a 9,000 hour apprenticeship.
Yeah, 9,000 hours. Seems twice what it is now, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It seems.
yeah. No, we used to go away to Nelson on block courses, and sorts of things. Good
And
times.
did you continue from there? You were there for quite a lot after that, weren't you?
Yep. So I think it was about 12 years in total. I was there, and in the later stages when Ross got a bit unwell,
Yeah.
he offered the garage to me to buy, and I was quite young then. I was only 22, and there was a couple other exciting adventures on the table at that stage, which was going to take me away from Hokitika. So I didn't know if I wanted that responsibility, but so I shared it by asking Rod Crosman if he wanted to come in with me,
Wow.
because he had that experience
Yep.
that I didn't. So we formed a partnership, and I think, I don't know how many years, we did quite a few years together, and did well.
And now, all these years later, Rod's still there. He
He
keeps
is,
talking
he's
about
still-
he keeps
yeah.
talking about retiring.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to happen.
No, well, he's less and less hours there, but
course.
yeah, he's a good man, Rod.
What about you, Sonya? Anything that was, did you have a burning desire to do anything at
Oh,
school?
no, I just wanted to get away and see
Escape.
the world. Yeah, so that hence travel agent training, and and then as I said, I did my studies, and that took me down a path, and lived and worked overseas. Came back to New Zealand, and look, ironically, ended up in some really strange places. Like, for instance, the last role I held was a General Manager for New Zealand Pork Industry Board, so went into that with zero knowledge of primary industry, and it was an amazing journey.
The
And-
Pork Industry Board. I hope Boris is not listening to this interview.
That's right, am I
Jeez,
Boris off?
he's-
He's scared, Boris.
He should be scared.
He'd be shaking in his boots.
And so what did you do there?
So basically there were two functions. It was, obviously we were the spokes group for pig farmers in New Zealand, which is a small industry, but actually a really valuable one. And then on the other side, it was just how to market the product to consumers. So,
Wow.
yeah, working on both sides of the coin.
Tony Williams always speaks very highly of the time that he spent working with you at
Yep.
Tourism West Coast.
Yep, that's right.
Was that good fun?
Oh, it was. Yeah, tourism, again, people. See, it's a people game.
Common theme here, Andy.
People industry.
And now it's fish and chips.
Now it's fish and chips.
Mate, I'm loving it. Now, well, look, we'll just wrap this up now, and the next interview, folks, is in a week's time, 5 o'clock. But enjoy this one, and if you know Sonya or Andy, put a comment in. They'll probably be watching it and they'll answer you. And thanks, guys, and we'll carry on.
Thanks very
See
much.
you later.
Now, tell me, Andy, as a young man at school, what do you reckon a close mate of yours? How would he have described you? Were you always in trouble, or were you, or were you?
I think I was just very active. So I had several sports that I was juggling. So as soon as school finished, I'd be playing various sports until I got home at 9 o'clock at night and went to bed. So I was busy.
So what would a mate have called you? How would he have described you?
I suppose you have to ask.
Well,
Busy.
We may have to do that. Sonya, what about you? What would a close friend of yours? How would she have described you?
A close friend of mine would describe me as curious and someone who, when I was younger, so I was really keen to get out of Hokitika and get out of the coast, and that I was never coming back. But it's that same thing, that old adage, never say never, because actually in the end it was a really nice place to come back to come home and back to a sense of community. I think when you spend a lot of time in large cities and things, and particularly offshore, and you don't know your neighbours and you don't know anybody, and so it's nice to come home. So I think people who knew me at school would have not been surprised that that's the path that took me. I was like off, gone, never coming back, but now here I am.
Well, look, that's a very common thing, and in the wild, the birds always get thrown out of the nest. If you're going to survive, you can't stay in the nest. And what about what was your first job?
Working at Walls Motors.
Round where? Okay.
Rossley Woolhouse owned it,
Yes.
and I would have been 14, so it was an after-school job and full-time in the holidays. And then as soon as I turned of age, I was out of school and doing an apprenticeship.
And so you did an apprenticeship as a mechanic?
Yep.
And Rossi, good man to work for?
Great man. I just had a huge amount of respect for Rossi. Not only was he just a really good person, but he was a very, very good engineer, automotive engineer. So very talented and clever.
So how many years, were you there a few years, I guess?
Yeah, well, those days of apprenticeships were 9,000 hours.
With it really?
Yeah, to do it. And, so yeah, it took a while.
And what happened next?
Once I got all my tickets, there was Rossi offered the business
Right.
to buy, and I was only 22, I think then, and I don't know if I wanted that responsibility at that age, because there was something else on the table at that stage, and that was a trip to Antarctica as a mechanic.
Right.
And myself and another local mate were going to go down and do that. It was not far off from Hackney. So this other offer came up from Rossi, and like I say, I wasn't quite ready to take on all that responsibility. So I had to talk to Rod Crosman,
Yes.
who was in Tankred Motors at that stage, and we agreed to sort of go in together. So we formed a partnership. And,
I'd forgotten that. Actually, isn't it? Doesn't time fly?
Doesn't it?
It's fantastic. And so you and Rod were partners
yeah.
for a few years, I guess.
Yeah, it was about 10 years.
Right. And Rod still, he must be due to retire.
Yeah, I think he must be getting enough. But we had a lot of fun in there. We had 10 years, really good fun, and then I just saw the chance to get out, and that was at that stage that I was looking at my next step, my next career.
And what was your next step?
They lowered the
They
height.
lowered the height.
Yeah.
And so you managed to squeak in?
Yeah.
A squeeze in, I should say.
Yes. So joined the police force.
And did you enjoy the police force?
Oh, it's fantastic. Fantastic.
Good career.
Yep.
Recommend it for a young man?
Yes, I do. Very much so. Ideally with a few years under your belt first.
Yeah.
And possibly have an exit plan in place. So give yourself 10 years and then have another look at it and see if it's still what you want to do. But absolutely, it's been fantastic for me.
Now you ended up leading the the armed defenders squad, or part of it, and the important people section of. I notice every time the Prime Minister or anyone of standing turned up, you always seem to be there skulking in the background. I could never work that out.
Yeah, so that's the protection officer side. So you there's quite a specific sort course you do for that.
Right.
And that tied in also quite nicely with the armed defender squad, which I've spent most of my life in.
Did you meet any famous people?
Oh, it's been lots. Yeah, there's been lots over the years.
Any of them that where you go, actually I like you?
Yeah. It's look, you're just concentrating on your job. You can't even. You're not even thinking about what they're saying, what they're talking about. You're actually thinking about your job. So it was just a job, but an important job.
And yes, I agree. And policemen and firemen remain our most respected people. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Sonya, what about you? You left school. Obviously, you went to university.
Not straight away, Bruce. So my first sort of part-time job was whilst I was at school as well, and that was working for Thelma and Ross King at Fitzherbert Street Store, I think at weekends and after school occasionally. So I went through to 7th form, and then I had to strike a deal with my folks, who were adamant that don't think you're leaving school and going on the dole. So the deal was.
That's a bit rough.
That wasn't my plan, but the deal was I wanted to be a travel agent, so I applied to Polytech in Christchurch. idea was if I didn't get accepted onto that course, then I had to go to university, so I was dual enrolled. But anyway, the travel agents training place on the course came through, so that's where I ended up heading. And I'm quite adamant that that ruined me, because I think I would have been about 18 when I started that, 18 or just 19 when I finished, and went into my first job, which was as a corporate travel consultant based in Christchurch. And I mean, I think I was 18 and I'd never been overseas at that time, and so my very first trip at about 19 was to Hawaii with on a first class for Mill. So I was ruined. I mean, thereafter sitting down the back of the aircraft was not quite the same as sitting in the nose.
So you went on a few familiars?
Yeah,
Hawaii for your first one?
my first one.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was awesome.
What a great job.
And yeah, I think it set up that lifelong love of exploring and looking at opportunities to live overseas, and eventually did for Emirates for a few years. So I was based in Dubai.
So as a air hostess?
Yeah, as a flight attendant.
On the international routes?
Yeah.
Coasters, isn't it great doing these interviews? You find out things you just didn't know. And what was that like?
Oh, that was awesome. I mean, I really wanted to go and live somewhere different, but I didn't really want to take a tried and true route through, landing in London and, working there for 7 years to be able to afford 7 minutes in Europe. So anyway, Emirates came along eventually. So previously I'd been there in New Zealand at Christchurch Airport. Emirates came along. That was awesome because their route network was and is really diverse. So it took me to some amazing places I'd just never have gotten to off my own steam. They looked after their employees really well. And then at the end of that, whilst I was at Emirates, I decided it was time to come back to university study, or to start that journey. So that's where I started through Massey by distance learning, because you get a lot of downtime when you fly. So I started chipping away at that undergrad degree, and then I ended up leaving Emirates and going and living in Thailand for about 5 years. And
living
in
as
Bangkok. Yeah, just living there.
in an apartment?
Yeah.
Living?
Yep, living.
What was that like?
Oh, that was amazing too. I mean, it's a huge city, and it's like the Middle East, the Arabian culture, you come into Thai culture, and they're both ancient and both different, and just really, really awesome.
Did you fit in? Did you fit in all right?
I did. I wasn't able to speak the languages. I knew enough to get past, or to get by, and to, find my way here and there. But there's no doubt about it, the more fluent you are in the native language, the easier it is. So, it was great. And look, I wouldn't change it for a moment. And if the opportunity came up again to go and live somewhere else, I still would. Because I think you learn a lot. Yeah.
That's interesting, Andy. And, well,
Yes, we've had these conversations.
of course. And now, you've both come together at this stage of your lives.
Yeah.
You're both in a new direction, and it's Porkies Takeaways. What's the future for Porkies? I know that you're so full of ideas.
Yeah.
And Andy, you're not frightened of work, so something's going to come of this, isn't it?
Well, look, when it came up for sale, we saw it for sale and just immediately dismissed it, because it's such an iconic business and it's so well known, not just here in Hokitika, but up and down the coast, and even arguably beyond the coast. So we sort of saw it and thought, oh well. And then at the last moment, there was another opportunity on the table, and I said to Andrew, look, I think we should at least phone up about it. And we did, and of course the rest is history, and here we are. But when it kind of came about really quickly, and we just think it's an amazing opportunity to take, such an iconic business and pick up where Linda and Calvin left off. And, we talked a lot about it, and we're really adamant that for the first 12 months we're not going to change a thing, because if the wheel's not broken, don't try and fix it. But we need to learn things, and it's been a huge learning curve so far, and really exciting. And now that we're sort of almost 6 months into it, we know a lot more, and those ideas and from both of us are just sitting there.
I know that when I put up a post, even if it's a photo of Porkies, and I might take it out of the council building, people from around New Zealand make comments. and they all know the place.
Yeah, they do.
It's fantastic. Of course, your first thing you see when you come to Hokitika, Porkies Takeaways on the left-hand side over the railway line. It really is iconic.
Optimist.
So how do you develop a fish and chip shop? I mean, what?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, Kel and Linda did such a good job, and we want to, leverage off what they've
Yeah.
created, because
Yeah.
they've done an awesome job. And like Sonya says, we just got to be careful. We for the next 12 months, we want things to be exactly the same. So, our workers we're just so blessed to have some key staff installed at Porkies. I mean, one of them's been there 22 years.
Oh wow.
And she is the oracle. And so, because we know nothing about it, it's imperative that they take the lead. And we've made it very clear it's just the same until we
Get up
to
to
learn,
speed.
come up to speed, and then we've got to look and say, how can we go to that next level?
And I think some of the opportunities around that are leveraging technology, the interface between technology and hospitality. And I mean, we had looked at, would we change the name? But because it's such a strong brand, that I think it'd be crazy to fiddle with that. So we're looking at how we can take what we've got, or what we've bought, been lucky enough to buy, and between us we've talked about the idea of making Porkies like the burger of the fish and chip world. So we've been down to Queenstown and been on recce's in there to look
Isn't that place stunning? They line up along the
I
footpath.
know.
And you pay a fortune for it. Half of them grab it and take a photo with it and then put it in the rubbish bin.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
It's the experience, so that's what it is, isn't it?
That's
It's
right. So we're
experience.
big on sort of developing and thinking about our experience and what we're offering and what we're about. And,
So I guess one day people will be able to send a text in and order their fish and chips.
yeah, we'd
Yeah,
like
that's
to
the sort
think
of
so.
thing we're thinking of. Maybe
Uber.
an app. Maybe-
Uber
Yeah.
Uber chips.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
Porkies app, who knows,
yeah, I can see.
Yeah, and maybe the food may change too. We don't know yet, but depending on what customers want, maybe not change, but may add
Yep.
something different. It
I
just
love
depends.
the slow way you're just rolling with the model that works and seeing what happens. I mean, it just makes so much sense. It really does. Well, look, this has been fantastic, guys. So, Coasters, this is Andy Lyes and Sonya Mathews, and they're the new owners of Porkies Takeaways. Now, you know a fair bit about them now. I know a lot more than I did 25 minutes ago. And guys, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk to me. This will play in 4 episodes on the Coasters Club, and then it'll go up full time on our Coasters Club YouTube channel. Coasters, fish and chips, Porkies, Hokitika, cool little town. Yeah, I think it's got to be good, doesn't it?
It does.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks very much.
Really appreciate it.
Great.